Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Ram.
The following is a lecture by His Grace Swami Krishnapad, given at the University of Suriname in South America on January 24, 1997, entitled Paradigm Shift, Adjusting Our Perception of Reality.
Simple, but rather profound considerations. There's a notion that's being discussed today in the global community about paradigm shift. And paradigm shift basically means how people, groups, individuals, and even nations begin to adjust their perceptions of reality. And it touches upon an area what is known in philosophy as epistemology. There's a very serious, big problem that the world is experiencing, and that is a problem of imbalance. So we hope that little discussion we have today can address some local as well as global issues based on how to create sufficient balances. If we had to go around the room and inquire from you what is the specific problem that you're having, or what is the problem that the university is experiencing or the nation is experiencing, we'll find many interesting discussions. We look at so many problems, we see that they're constantly occurring. As we enter into the 21st century, it's kind of shocking because still we find that about 50% of the people in the world are actually malnourished or literally go to bed hungry. Something like 1/3 almost of the people in the world are still illiterate. 1/4 of the people in the world still not even have basic drinking water. And it's kind of quite amazing because although we see technology increasing every decade, if we look at the world, we see the instruments for communication are greater than they've ever been at this point in human history. But at the same time, mutual intelligibility, people's ability to genuinely communicate, is really going down. It's at quite a low ebb. And you'll see that manifested in certain types of problems. For instance, problems of ethnicity, racism, tribalism. There are increasing problems of genderism. There are increasing problems even of religious fanaticism or sectarianism. If we look at the world, it's shocking to know that the number one business in the entire world is the illicit and pharmaceutical drug business. The number two business is defense. That means our global culture is so much based on people narcoticizing themselves, either trying to cope or either trying to make money, etc., in illicit ways, or based on just not being able to cope because of certain social psychological problems, because many people are addicted even to pharmaceutical drugs. Some people take drugs to go to bed, take drugs to wake up, drugs to carry them through the day. So if we look at that, anytime you want to know something very significant about a person, just look at how they spend their money. You want to know about an institution, a corporation. If you examine how they spend their money, you will immediately know their priorities. You'll know many things about their aspirations and their future, because where the money goes tells where your interest is. It's shocking to know that right now, today, the world spends about 20,000, and excuse me for using English, using an American conception, but I'm more familiar with such. Although I didn't have travel to most places in the world. the average amount that is spent each year to train, equip, and prepare the average military personnel is about $20,000 US dollars every year. The average that's spent to educate the average child worldwide is only about $400, $500. Now that tells us something. $20,000 goes into preparing and training the average military personnel globally. $400 or so, $500 for education. So there's a problem there. One serious problem is that, again, there's so much emphasis on how we defend, how we protect, how we find ways to kill, or how we find ways to expedite literally violence. When one of the most important factors in any civilization is, of course, education. Of course, your presence here actually attests to that you obviously think education is something that's very important. But if we look at the various problems of increasing crime, increasing drug abuse, if we look at problems in relationships breaking down in many, many places, in most countries you find more divorces because people are finding it more difficult in how to be able to relate to each other, whether it's within the family or within political parties or within institutions. Why? Because everything, the family is a microcosm of the society, of the nation. And so as family units become weaker, you'll find that institutions also become weaker. If people begin to become more fixed toward gross materialism only, then it creates a big problem. Because it creates a lot of in-group out-group. When resources are scarce, it creates more in-group out-group, people grabbing. When everybody for themselves, every group for themselves, you have anarchy. And it's ultimately there's minimization of what can be produced or developed. So I think most of you are from the behavioristic sciences. Oh, let me find out. How many of you are in this particular institution? You went to the technical school. Raise your hand. I'll address my presentation later. How many of you went to the behavior sciences? Oh, so good. Wonderful. So, for instance, the amount of information that the world is developing is increasing right now every 5 or 6 years because there's just so much to process. Much of, especially the Western world, just like in America and many parts of Europe, over 50% of the jobs are jobs based on information processing. Think about it. Data processing. So much is being geared now toward how to codify information. And what is somewhat scary is that as we are processing more and more information, we're often losing our ability to access real knowledge and wisdom. At many universities, you can get a PhD degree in some of the most minute areas and be completely unaware, oblivious to so many other things. And that's called sometimes scholarship. You can get a PhD degree in some universities in how butterflies turn over. Why and how ants crawl. Huh? I mean, really, it's amazing. Because one of the downsides of present-day civilization is that we're becoming so much a case society, where commodities become important rather than community and relationships. And that's why you find in so many societies where there's so much emphasis only on rapid growth, what do you see? Concomitant. What do you see if you go around most of Europe and America and places like that? You'll see increase, we said earlier, in drugs. You'll see increase in suicide and all types of mental illnesses, neurosis, psychosis, schizophrenia. And you will find that at the end of the day, that more and more people are feeling incomplete, even though they have so many mature assets. Because if we have material assets, and if we make technology the priority without a human in this instance, we say a spiritual place, then there's a problem. And we can see that. Right now, there is enough nuclear arsenal to eliminate everyone on the planet over a dozen times. There is tremendous chemical weaponry, biological weaponry. And we see there is great fear in the international community of even terrorists, who they understand eventually will have the technology of how to even produce nuclear bombs. Already, chemical and biological bombs are there. Doesn't take much intelligence to do that. These things are quite simple to just do with the technology. And it's putting much of the world in a very precarious situation. If we look at the ecological problems now, we'll hear it again and again about ozone complications, resources depletion. So many resources now are being depleted that are not replaceable. And this all has to do with the certain level of mindset that is permeating throughout most of the global community. And so many people are beginning to see that if there's really to be a future for human civilization, there must be a shift in consciousness. There must be more of an understanding of how to be more in harmony with nature, how to create synchronicity where people are being able to complement each other more. Otherwise, the world is fragmented. It's fragmenting based on genderism, it's fragmenting based on racism, it's fragmenting based on tribalism, it's fragmenting based on political persuasion, it's fragmenting based on economic considerations, while people somehow pretend to cope, but it's literally, a lot of you just read the paper and listen to the international news. And from some of your own experiences, you see the delicacy that's there. If people are self-centered and put materialism as a priority. So as I've been in many, many countries, I involve myself in many different schemes. I also consult many diplomats about nation building. I meet sometimes many UN officials and even presidents of countries. And some of the things we discussed about nation building that really will produce a future for the citizens that will be based on raising ethics and morals, that will engender higher consciousness. Anthropologists and psychologists, they tell us the average person uses less than about 10% of their global power. That means every single individual has so much potential to be able to understand life, enjoy life, to be able to solve problems that even in some cases seem unsolvable, but most of the time we do not access those dormant powers. In some universities, they are beginning to have now new ways of looking at things. Some of you in taking physics, you'll hear of the new physics that's looking at things in a more holistic sense. Now, as we look at astronomy and cosmology, they're finding so many other aspects of reality that weren't previously considered. Even recently, they found another planet within this universe. So whether we go out to look at things deeper or make a deeper inner connection, there is a need to go beyond only just the orthodox. Why? Well, just take your examples here, or examples at universities. Many of the texts you're using now, by the time some of you graduate, they will be irrelevant. Because things are changing so fast. Many of you will have to come back again and again for refresher courses. That is natural. That is the nature of material information. That is constantly changing. Many of the books that you get next year, the authors who wrote those books in Europe and America will tell you that if they had to write that book again, they would change chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6. So some people are very interested in wanting to know, is there levels of realization that are not just relative or transitory? Is there certain sources of information that is inherent to the human condition? Is there certain experiences that are universal, that are not just based on only the time, place, and circumstance, or not just based on the relative environment? Just like we look at different cultures. One action done in one culture can be considered improper, in another culture is considered okay. So many things are relative But there are certain things that are part or inherent to the human experience. There are certain things that are universal. Those things deal with wisdom and not just information processing. Information processing means that you have something based on something for some particular time that's functional for that particular time perhaps, but may not necessarily be functional for the near or far future. And history constantly explains this to us. History is constantly elucidating that many things that we thought were a certain way at a certain time, that later as we have more information, more ways to investigate the variables, then we come to different conclusions. So part of the discussion I want to have with you is how to go beyond only information processing. Why is that really important? It's important because it has a lot to do with the world that we all are going to be living in the near future and what is developing now. So many of the problems that are facing human civilization are beyond only material solutions, based on only using limited faculties. Some of these problems need higher technology to be able to have more of a holistic perception on what the problem is to be able to solve. Just as many of you in the scientific fields. So the more you're understanding the variables, the more you can come to a healthy conclusion. We constantly are exposed to something very interesting. We're constantly noticing that what we see is not what we get. What we see is not necessarily what it is. Our senses are extremely weak at our present state of evolution. There are sounds going on 2 buildings across the way. My ear cannot hear them. My eyes cannot even see what is behind me. But although my ear does not hear what is going on 1 or 2 blocks away, something is happening. Some experiences, some sound vibrations, some discussions. But my present position tells me that it does not exist. Every sense, from eye to ear to nose, all of these senses are not fully perceiving so many things that are part of the even immediate environments. Like in this room here, maybe there's 30, 40 people. But there's so many other life forms inside this room. If we take a glass of water, here we have we take a glass there, put water, half water. So we look into it with the naked eye, we won't see anything. Hopefully not. When we take a microscope, you take a microscope, you will see so many different entities. So there is so much that is a part of our reality that our normal sensory perception does not, in fact, pick up. But there have been, from time to time, people who have gone beyond this normal sense perception and have been able to look at things deeper. And they are developing sciences now that are addressing the fact that there are so many things that are happening, so many things that are existing. We don't know exactly what and how, but we know that they exist and we want to find out. There's a science called parapsychology that basically says that we really don't know what the human condition really is. Something is going on that's far beyond our understanding. Some laws, some different laws and things based on we don't know what, but let us explore it. Parapsychology looks at what is called mental telepathy. The transmission of one mind being able to read another mind. Clairvoyance. The ability to be able to see things outside of the immediate geographical environment and even to see into the future. It is constantly being proven that some people have this ability, some people are born with some of these abilities, some people have been trained, some people have purified their senses through various techniques to be able to increase their sense of perception. Miracles are always going on. Science recognizes that there are miracles, but cannot quite understand, in most cases, why such things happen. Just as there are yogis who can stop the heart from beating, there are people in all different traditions who have all kind of naturalistic ways and psychic ways for healing the sick. And even now, in some of the major countries now, there's a whole investigation now of alternative health. Because they're saying, hold on, we thought this didn't work. We see acupuncture, acupressure, all of these things, massage therapy, they're all based on subtle techniques, addressing certain aspects of reality more other than just the gross. Because we're at the time when people are beginning to get glimpses that there is more to be experienced, and that the problems are intense. There's a need to have more instruments, more variables to bring about to solve these particular problems. So, what we want to look at is what does that tell us about what we are as human entities. The ancient systems emphasize that humankind is much more than just a physical entity. That we have a physical body. We have intelligence. We have a mind. Just as someone has a jacket, someone has a white pants, blue pants, red shirt, blue shirt. We are using those things. And the person who is using such is the actual entity, and that which is being used is simply just the instrument or the garment or just the external. What we're emphasizing is that we can notice, especially with modern technology. You can lose a finger, you can lose a hand, you can lose a leg, you can even have a heart transplant. You can even have your heart taken out. Still life goes on. But if your soul needs the physical presence, you can even have all of these things still intact, but the body is considered a corpse. That means there's something very significant about what we really are. And there's something interesting about what we are carrying that normally we take as the all in all. There is so much knowledge about the physical body. Basically, all material sciences are basically about the physical body and certain things about the psychological presence. If you look at philosophy and psychology and sociology, it looks at also emotions and some of the subtle aspects of the physical. But there are not so many scientists that are dealing with the deeper or the more subtle aspects of our existence. And therefore, it leaves us very somewhat incomplete as we try to enjoy life on a higher level, and as we try to cope with our various problems, as well as our global problems. As we are literally in a precarious situation, due to resource depletion, due to much of the world economy, that there has been so much self-centeredness and misuse of things that such a paradigm shift of being more selfless, being more caring, looking more at what the implications, ramifications of our activities, and especially looking at what really constitutes the human position. We are not just machines. And as we relate only based on that way, then we find, like what is happening in many parts of the world, where there's so much emphasis only on rapid growth and gross hardcore technology, that people lose their ability to be human. And they lose their ability to have loving relationships. So therefore you find divorces increasing everywhere. So this brings us to a second look at the body. As we look at growth, we see from the baby's body to the child, the teenager, to the adult, to the elderly person, that the body is constantly changing. But that is the same person. The life force is the same. So the body is always changing. Science says every 7 years, biology says every 7 years, we actually have a new body because we've replenished all of our cells. So the body is constantly changing. The body you had 10 minutes ago, before you walked into this room, is different than the body you have now, due to the changes that take place. So we never were, to its entirety, a physical entity. The physical aspect is always in change. Molecules, nucleus, the atoms, they're constantly in change and in relationship. But there's something that's permanent. And that is that life force of the soul. So how important it is that most of the things that is relative, we give most attention to, and that which is eternal and permanent, there is little information, little knowledge about. No wonder things are becoming more problematic. You can see distinctly the presence of the soul, or the absence of the soul, when there is abrupt death. Somebody gets hit by a car, or somebody gets murdered, shot. A few minutes, they were considered to be an active, living entity, having all the symptoms of life. But now, we look at the body and we say, it's a corpse. The mother runs in the street, grabs the child, oh, my son, he is gone. What is she talking about? He's there. No? He's there. Everything is there. But no. Body lays around for a little while, starts smelling, it goes through all kinds of changes. It's the same body, but something has happened. The eyes are there, the ears are there, the arms are there, everything is there, except the soul. Sometimes we can understand the thing by its presence, sometimes by its absence. You know, something has changed because before, that particular entity had all the symptoms of life. It was mobile, respiration, defecation, etc., etc. Now, none of those are functioning. That means, even though people were thinking that that person was actually that physical presence, it wasn't. Just carrying that equipment around. Now, the soul has departed. This brings us to a universal teaching known as reincarnation. Reincarnation, in one sense, is not a metaphysical consideration. It is a very scientific and very practical. Reincarnation means, like in the law of conservation, every action produces a corresponding reaction. Some actions are immediate, some actions are long-term. Reincarnation is like in the Judeo-Christian conception, we reap what we sow. Reincarnation is actually major thought for most people on this planet. It's only due to recent Western influence that people are beginning to question and doubt it, to later come back to it. Reincarnation is a part of Hinduism, Buddhism. It is a part of ancient African culture. It is a part of Native American thought. It is a part of ancient Greek and Roman thought. Reincarnation was spread all over the city, because it basically means that we are more than just physical beings, and life is a continuum. Our scientists tell us that energy, once it's not created or destroyed, it simply is changing in form. So it's a matter of the shift in how it changes, or energy conversion. But the energy goes on. So, as people learn more and more how to purify their senses, which allows them to increase their faculties, or increase their intelligence, increase their perception. It is not that it is such a unique thing that they're 9 times. Such a unique thing that they're great philosophers or great scientists who somehow use so much more of their faculties. It is amazing that in general that we have so much and we use so little. But our basic materialistic, reductionistic culture train us, in fact we say passionapina pashati, trained us to see and not see, hear and not hear. Trained us to live mainly for the moment and for the external. And that's why you'll find that many, many people are feeling very empty, even though they have so much material success. You look at so many people who are so-called very successful, and you'll find that in many cases, if they have not developed some greater human values, their life is miserable. So they're more prone be alcoholics. They're more prone for taking drugs. They're more prone for depression. They have psychotherapists and psychiatrists as on retention because they're constantly needing somebody to talk to. There's one building in Washington, D.C. that has more psychiatrists and psychotherapists than the average country has in the whole country. You know who goes to that building the most? Senators, congressmen. And the psychiatrists, they go from office to office to treat each other also. Because, like in America, 96% of all the families have about 3 televisions. And so people come home, they all run to their TV, they don't eat together, they see each other only when they're leaving, they're going to school, they say bye, Mommy, I'm gone, Daddy, I'm back, they go to the room, they go in the basement. Husband comes in, very little conversation, because people have forgotten the sense of community based on commodities. When there's so many things to play with and things to enjoy. That's some of the greatest technology that's created, the nuclear bomb. And now they're making bombs that can destroy the individuals, but will not destroy the buildings. That's called a great achievement. So, as most of you in the sciences, we highly encourage you to not be satisfied only with material information. Because we see information is constantly changing. We see information is not necessarily improving the quality of life. But information used with high perception becomes very powerful. Because information is powerful. But information that is only based on the relative, or only the physical scheme of things, will not be holistic or will not be profound enough to deal with an increase in the kind of power that the world is beginning to experience more and more. As we are able to be more in control of the variables in our life, then we can naturally solve more problems, whether they're personal or institutional problems, etc. In this sense, involving oneself in spirituality should not just be a sentimental affair. Based on what is probable. The empirical methodology can not necessarily prove something categorically. It says this is more likely, that is more likely based on these particular variables. So it still addresses most of the physical scheme of things and is constantly in transition. But there are certain universalities, and that goes beyond information and goes into wisdom. And so we basically share these small points of view. It's just a way to stimulate you to be real scholars. There are times when people were scholars because they were interdisciplinary. They were eclectic. Here you're fortunate that many of you know many languages and you're exposed to many cultures because Suriname is very heterogeneous. That is wonderful. Many places in the world are not like that. People speak only one language. They see things only in a more of a myopic way. Here, your natural environment should help us to be more and more evaluating things in various ways to try to understand things in various levels. Because we have many languages, many cultures. Because we're a small country, we're surrounded by many other different countries, etc. And as we begin to develop the higher faculties, we will naturally become more loving. You realize the people who love deeply, they live longer, they're healthier. Every single disease has a psychological counterpart. It's not an accident that when people come down with cancer, almost inevitably you can find certain things happening in their life. There's a divorce, there's a death, there's a bankruptcy, certain drama. Because the mind feeds on the cells. So happens, interactions, vibrations, and reflections of energy. We're a big circuit of different types of energy. So, as we are having trouble being able to access deeper love, then we naturally will have more diseases and more problems of that nature. So we encourage you to try to go beyond the data processing and just the cramming. You take the test and you cram. But some years from now, you'll be out into the world of work. And then it'll be very important what you really took with you, what you have become, what you are developing and sharing. The university is the most important because in most cases, from the university will come the next president, the next minister of defense, the next financial manager of the country, from the intellectual institution. So much of the mindset that will determine how things function, in many cases, will come from the institution. And so in the institution, we're so much based in this hard kind of raw capitalism, with everybody for themselves. We're based on situational ethics, where I have my truth, you have your truth, he has his truth, she has her truth, he has his truth. At the end of the day, there's no truth. Everyone just does whatever they feel. Then there's no teamship. There's no cooperation. And then there will be deterioration. So, I wanted to short last points about life after death, and then we'll stop. So, if we are living for more than one life, that means that our present life is so much based on patterns from our previous life. And our future will be so much based on the things that we're doing now. This is, of course, called karma. And karma just means that various patterns associated with the entity begin to unfold. There's individual karma, there's race karma, there's tribe karma, there's planetary karma. Notice how civilizations and how new countries they rise and sometimes they fall. You begin to look at what's happening, and you'll see as an environment becomes literally more sinful, more unnatural, then the karma changes. And the civilization begins to fall. Civilization rises as we are more in harmony with the natural order of things. When you go against the natural order, you make reaction. That is just, natural perception of reality. When you use things how they're supposed to be used for, you do the natural thing, auspicious results. When you do things unnatural, then gradually you get inauspicious results and even deterioration. So instead of only looking at information and looking at things in a myopic way, but to be very interdisciplinary. As you learn, you take your particular discipline, degree, then at the same time, take notice of other things that are part of knowledge. Because as we're integrating things, it helps us then to bring more to our own particular field. Just like maybe some of you are studying architecture. So a very good architect understands so much, not only about the physical construction, but about the emotions and the psychological effects of people and space and color and so many things that then help that person to be able to produce something that is going to be very powerfully used because they're understanding sociological, economical, political factors. A person with wisdom, because they are concerned about the environment, they're concerned about the quality of life experiences, and therefore they tune in to many aspects of reality. But let us stop there because you may want to mention a few things, but take a few questions based on what you may like us to tune into a little more. We're just trying to share some basic points of ways how to make a paradigm shift. And one way of making a paradigm shift is seeing the necessity that many of the old ways are just not working sufficiently. The basic mechanical, reductionistic ways of looking at life is actually puts the world in a very endangered state. There's a need for more humanism, a need for more spiritualism, a need for more understanding about the mysteries of life. And that comes especially from deeper investigation of things. So we'll stop there. If you have questions, raise your hand, and then we'll try to address that. the talk about the universe.
Yes, the concept of science has been approached to now, which is mainly used in the Western world, has been used as a tool for many things. And those things have resulted in the picture you just have presented as the maldistribution of wealth. And within that science, we had a science of economics, where we say the law of economics, which now is being challenged by those who are in favor of some more sustainable approaches, which to my mind, to my opinion, are the humanistic approaches. So there's now a conflict going on between that way of science and a new science, which is in the development. What other explanation can we give apart from not finding the answers for the problems? Are there more spiritual explanations behind this? If there are, please elaborate.
Yes. When humankind is very egocentric or self-centered, then the tendency is to think about what will be beneficial for that present time. And so, having big factories that pollute the atmosphere will make a lot of money at that particular time. But then later we'll have a lot of repercussions that will be unfortunate. Or using resources in ways that later they'll be depleted will be good for the present time, but not for the future generations. So it has a lot to do with this gross self-centeredness, based on individuals and based on countries. See, now with this massive communication system, massive technology, all of a sudden, some of the top thinkers are beginning to realize we're in a global village. And what is happening in Mexico, what is happening in Jamaica, what is happening in Suriname, is going to affect what's happening around the world. And so because of that, in most cases, it's unfortunate, the people who are thinking differently because they're trying to see what is going to work. And some are thinking differently because they are genuinely humanly concerned. It's like in business now, there's big trends where people are trying to manage more as people manage. And it's not so much because so many of the managers really care, they realize that kind of thinking makes more money. So some things are shifting because they will just be more productive. And some things are shifting because people see the necessity of trying to really relate to the humankind, in a more compassionate way. But it's happening in one field after another. But it's happening a little slow. Any other question?
From years now, the European countries have this practice, for example, called the circle country. And nowadays, these circle countries are deeply involved in the drug trafficking. Have we declared this as a result?
It's twofold. First, the mature side, for instance, this slide is emphasizing about the downfall of many of the Western civilizations. About 55, almost 60% of all illegal illicit drugs go to America. Think about it. That means a country that's seemingly so prosperous is so much engaged or helping to support or arranging or taking so many illicit drugs due to, again, and it's not just a matter of money. Many of the third world countries, it's just a matter of money. An interesting sociological syndrome takes place. We're seeing that in Nigeria, Pakistan, and many other countries. Is that first the country becomes a carrier of drugs. It comes from other places, and then it comes to get it sent. In some cases, manufactured. But then after that syndrome becomes dominant, then they start becoming users. Once they start becoming users, crime increases like anything. 1/3 of every prisoner in America is then triggered through the drug-related crimes. So as more countries become drug takers, and it happens, first one being, drug distributors, then you'll see degradation increase on all the levels. So the question is, is this karma? It's a political and sociological factor, but it's also karmic, in the sense that as, again, people have a priority of just material considerations, then that will produce certain types of results. And so that's why you find now, in many places in the world, some of the richest people are people who are involved in literally bringing down even human civilization through the drug traffic. Even in the United Nations, every place, some of the most highest circles now you find people involved in such. Because when crime fades, then people will do more crime. When so many people are engaged in whatever, I write books. I've just written one book called Leadership for Native Higher Consciousness. And it addresses many things about leadership. And it emphasizes, as well as a book we use called the Bhagavad Gita, very ancient book, and it mentions that what leaders do, others will follow. That's just a human experience. Whatever people who are in power, who are popular, what they do, and the common people begin to watch it, and they begin to imitate such things. And of course, leaders also influence each other. So when people begin to see that these things are paying off and they're producing, they're generating prosperity, then more and more people will turn to such. When role models again become individuals who are really caring, individuals who are doing things, making a serious contribution in conscious raising, then you'll find that that becomes kind of contagious. More people will start doing such. So this is the copy. Anyone else?
We have now two main worldly threat various problems. Food and health problems. How can we overcome those problems by spiritual solutions?
Next question. Food problem is very, very serious. One way is about management. For instance, many places we're using the land for cash crops. And so it's not the best use of the land for the future. In many cases, we're finding, like for instance, coming from Australia and then a week ago from Africa. And so I was doing some national TV programs in Africa, and I was explaining to several of the leaders of the country that right now the African continent has 3/4 of all of the available farming land in the entire world is on the African continent. But at the same time, Africa has one of the worst development schemes in the world. And it's not because of lack of resources, but mismanagement. Africa has the most zinc, copper, diamonds, gold, so many different resources there that are necessary for the 21st century. So many times it's the management of the resources, not that God has not given. The God has made available, and it's how we manage. So in some places, people have become afraid or intimidated by working the land. They become intimidated by doing things that are applied. And I'm glad that's why I feel kind of pleased that I'm in a technical aspect of the university right now. Because many of your studies are applied. I'm not downing the humanities. But, we have so many degrees in sociology. People get a PhD degree and they can't do some basic things. So then often at least we know how to do things. And when we do things, then we can use some of the resources that are there in a way that's more productive. So it has a lot to do with that. Again, looking at what will be the best for the greatest number of people, rather than what we grow, so we can send it to this place and that place and make money, while the people are not happy, or the nutrition situation is imbalanced, or we are using the money for defense or whatever. It's a matter of priority.
In places like India and China, where they have more problems with population, okay, do you believe that more advanced countries like the U.S. Should develop or that start maybe a balance itself off, because some people will start to that and die.
First is that there's a question of whether those countries are really advanced. If advancement means you have more runaway children, advancement means you have more suicide, advancement means you have more divorce, advancement means you take more drugs, advancement means that 1/3 of every citizen has a gun. You know, in America, 1/3 of every person in America has a handgun. If we're in America now, there's about 60 people. About 20 of those people would have guns. We can't imagine a civilized society when everybody is equipped to kill someone else. That's the law of the jungle. Huh? So we say that such countries, and Russia also, you know, Russia, the average woman in Russia has about 6 abortions. Alcoholism is very, very intense. So many things we think advanced are not really advanced. We say they have more toys to play with. They have more sophisticated toys than one thing. Now, we're not down in science, because we see that the Western countries, you have excelled in science. No, I understand. I was just, you know, right. So, with those policies, in some cases, those policies are very manipulative. And I'm not representing any one government. You know, I'm a global personality, so I'm born in America. But I know the foreign policies. And many of the policies, and like most countries do, who have assets, that they give the aid based on all kinds of mitigating circumstances. And so sometimes the aid literally degrades the particular country it's given to, or it makes that country more available to be exploited, to be used. And so that is unfortunate. But then it comes back. Because then when the country can't pay, like America and Europe, in some cases, about to fall apart because the loans they're giving out are not coming back. And so if America and Japan falls apart, and the whole world system falls apart. So gradually, we're kind of being forced to live together better and care more for each other, or we create this tremendous global pandemonium chaos. And we're right around the corner from one or the other happening. Because we're at a point now where we reach certain thresholds. That means you get to a point that the system can no longer take any more before it has to find a way to rebuild itself. It has to find a way to change itself. So we're reaching certain thresholds. So yes, it is natural that if one is really concerned about humanity, if you have something, you find ways to make it available to share in a judicious way. Knowing that, again, knowing that what you put out does come back in a particular way. What is the best question?
Coming back to my first question, you said that management is the solution. But how do you get the insight in the management you have to apply by spiritual way? That's the problem. How do you get access to a spiritual quantities that are potentials we have to make use of them? Because you can see management is the way to solve the problem. But how do we get access to those potentials to have good insight and the way to solve the problem by management and way of management?
But just the kind of progress that you're making now. We see management as a problem, and we realize It's not just a matter of administration, arranging things, but it's about the consciousness that's involved. And so every manager is a product of a certain mindset, which is going to determine how they're going to use, how they're going to arrange things, etc. And then the question is, how do we change the mindset? And that's why always association is most important. The kind of environments we're associated, the kind of materials we read, the sort of things that we are processing, imbibing, is going to determine what is going to be manifested externally. In some places, what people are mostly being fed is what's on the TV, what's in the cinema. Many people, the books they read, dispensational books. So therefore, that is, their diet. So they're acting certain way. That's why we're emphasizing the need for the greater growth. Now, how do we do that? So there are various techniques of how to do it. And I'll explain 4 to you real quick. When we are able to be masters of the senses rather than controllers of the senses, it allows each manager, each person, to do things that will be more auspicious. Being slaves of the senses means that we're just controlled by the passions. So therefore, we respond in ways that are not so healthy. Some of the ancient teachings emphasize the danger, and one of the first things we were talking about, in intoxication. Intoxication have a way of weakening the constitution. You see that in intoxication, people do many things that they would normally do. Anything that can cause you to lose such control, it has some gross physical effects and some subtle physical effects. Diet has big effects. People are gradually beginning to notice how what you eat affects your temperament. It not only affects your body, your health, but it affects your temperament. And as one is trying to use faculties more, then one wants to be more in control of their temperament and their consciousness. So therefore, you'll find, constantly appearing in ancient wisdom systems, you'll find the emphasis about no eating of flesh. You'll find this amongst many mystics, many people who have gone beyond just the material technologies and literally have higher perceptions, have released some of these increasing faculties that they develop. You'll find this among Christian mystics, among Buddhist mystics, Hindu mystics, among the Sufis, Muslim mystics, you'll find it. And you'll find it among many people who just look at the present economy and they realize how much of our land we use or we lose, how much of the grains that we lose. We lose our grains something like about, I think, 7 times our land, 10, 15 times, just by the idea of so many things being processed for the raising of feeding the flesh. Third, illicit affairs. Why does that make a difference? When individuals see each other only as units for sense gratification, it dehumanizes the individual as well as the relationship. Now people are so much captured only by the lust. Relationships that are not accountable. And therefore they have to have many partners because they don't have any one deep relationship. And therefore they begin to see society and see so many things based on what they can get out of it, rather than what can be experienced, what can be shared. And so illicit affairs, that's why Bible, Quran, Torah, Vedas all emphasize about the dangers of adultery, promiscuous activity. There's a very high spiritual scientific reason for that. Because where there is the gross lust, then it minimizes the love, which helps the mindset to engage in management in a very humanistic and more of a profound way. And there's such things as like gambling. Has a tremendous way of weakening the constitution. That people can gamble away their school fees, They can gamble away all kinds of things, their children's money, their children's clothes. And there are hospitals now in some countries for habituated gamblers. We're mainly talking about things that take away your power, take away your control. They cause one to be locked in to being enslaved by the passions. These things actually have ways to gradually weaken human fabric. It causes us to act more for the moment and in self-centered ways. So this is the substance. The other thing is meditational techniques have been known. There's a lot of examinations going on in universities, examining mantra meditation and things of this nature, because sound vibration affects sound. Sound affects matter. And so the kind of things that we think, sub-vocal thought, or we speak, affects the vibrations of the physical presence, affects the atmosphere. So as we are improving the mental faculties through such things as meditation or being free of stress. You know, this is something that's going on all over now in high business circles. Some of the top businesses now are teaching stress management. And it deals with diet and meditation. They have no interest in God, no interest in spirituality. They're interested in making money and being successful, and they realize that stuff works. So something at that level that there is a need for people to be less stressed. Stress causes hypertension, causes ulcers. It causes us to respond to things in a reactive way rather than proactive.
To further your interest in the subject matter of this tape, please contact the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology, P.O. Box 76451, Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. 20013.
Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare